On this episode of the Grow Your Video Business podcast, we go over some of the legal layers of protection that every video business should have in place. We talk about some tips for production companies and their contracts and why even pro bono jobs should have contracts. And then we talk about insurance, all this like real nerdy business type stuff that's really important. And the one kind of insurance that saved me and my company $10,000 when something very unexpected happened, but something that could actually happen and probably has happened to a lot of us. You just didn't know that if you had insurance, it could cover the fees here. So you're going to want to listen up. What is up, friends? Hey, welcome to the show, created for videographers to build a better business, make a bigger impact, and enjoy the journey. I'm your host, Ryan Coral from Studio Sherpas, and this is the Grow Your Video Business podcast. I'm super excited about this episode with Braden Drake. As you heard in the teaser, we cover lots of good stuff that is honestly going to help save you and your business tons of money and stress. It's going to be great, but before we jump in, let me just remind you that the Onward Summit is coming. I don't know if you're like, okay, Ryan, I already got my ticket. Stop talking about it. There's a reason why I keep talking about it. I'm not getting rich off of you attending the Onward Summit. If that were so, then maybe I would be pushing it differently. I'm pushing it because I know the impact that in-person events have had for my video business, for me personally, the friendships that I have built over the last 2 decades, almost 2 decades, of me going to other events for videographers. I've built friends. I've created a very strong network of other people that I've been able to lean on for a long time when we've been in a pinch, when I have questions. So this is a great opportunity. Maybe you're part of the Grow Your Video Business Facebook group and you're making friends there. Maybe you've been a part of the Studio Sherpas community for a while and you've made some friends online. That is awesome and that's really helpful. But something magical happens when you are in person. So come be inspired by the speakers, the presentations, but also the side conversations that you're going to have with other videographers and other people that are trying to grow their business and really be a business owner instead of just somebody who is doing all of the things and who is the cog, who's kind of the bottleneck in the business. But if you're experiencing any overwhelm or frustration in your business, or you're just you've plateaued and you're like, what is the next step? This is an amazing opportunity for you to be able to think about your business, to hear what is working for other people, and for you to spend time making a plan and a strategy for the future so that you can really do more of the things that you want to do. So go to studiosherpas.com/onward to learn more about the conference, but grab your ticket because time is running out. It's going to be here before you know it. So if you're far away and you need to fly, you're going to want to get your flight pretty soon. If you're driving, who knows? Gas prices are going up. Just kidding. Well, they kind of are, but it's not going to make that big of a difference, I don't think. But if you need some gas money, let me know. I would love to try to figure out how to get you here. Let's grab a quick word from our sponsor, Core Group, and then we'll jump into this episode. If there was one thing that could have ended my business 17 years ago, it would be because of the numbers. I hate accounting, taxes, W-9s, W-2s, W-40s, spreadsheets, all of that stuff. And I hate it mostly because I'm afraid of it. I'm just not great with numbers. If this sounds familiar, or if you're so new in your business that it's not even on your radar yet, you need Core Group. Core Group can help you create financial systems and tax strategies that you need so you can grow profitably, and they've been doing this for over 20 years. They become an extension of your team so that you can stay in your lane of expertise and then lean on them to help guide you along the way. For me, having a team of experts in my corner to help keep track of our books and just to make sure that we're budgeting for taxes appropriately, to have an actual strategy for our taxes and our accounting is priceless. And it allows me to sleep easier at night, knowing that I don't have to be an expert in that arena. If you want to avoid surprises in your video business, and you want experienced help building a plan for the future that you want, both professionally and personally, head over to studiosherpas.com/core for more information. And when you're ready to set up a free consult with them, make sure to mention Studio Sherpas for a special discount too. Got your back. Get more out of your accountant. Go to studiosherpas.com/core. What is up, friends? Hey, welcome to this episode. Today, my guest is Mr. Braden Drake. Braden is a California licensed attorney and tax professional. He works primarily with service-based creative small business owners, I think all of us, through his courses where he educates on contracts, business entities, cash flow systems, and taxes. Braden, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here too, because this is the stuff that I like talking about the least.
Okay, all right. Well, hopefully it won't be too bad.
Well, no, and I just say that, I know if this is your first time listening to the show, you're like, what is Ryan talking about? If you've been listening to the show for a while, you're like, okay, I know Ryan hates numbers, he hates accounting, bookkeeping, taxes, all that stuff. So I also know that it is like so foundational as a business owner. So when you are ready to kind of be serious about your business, like these are the things that you need to be thinking about, hearing, and making plans around. Otherwise, really bad things can happen. Right, Braden?
Right. Yeah. I mean, first of all, we never want to get hate mail from the IRS. So if that's not incentive enough to be on top of your numbers, then I don't know what will be. But above and beyond that, it's like we can't make strategic business decisions without the numbers. And that's what I think we don't focus on enough. Like, we all got to make a profit. You got to know if you're charging enough, all that good stuff.
What was the moment for you where you realized, like, man, I really have something for the niched world of, like, creative service-based entrepreneurs?
Well, I kind of meandered into this niche, more or less, if we're being totally honest. Like, I was in law school, and growing up, like, I always
Thank you for being honest.
Yeah, I was always like really into creative endeavors, like love HGTV, all that stuff. Bought a DSLR camera in college, never really learned how to use it, if we're also being honest. But while I was waiting for my bar results, I got a part-time job at West Elm where I met a lot of interior designers. And then I also would always talk to the creators that were there doing pop-up shops. They would be there on the weekend selling their stuff. And long story short, one of them introduced me to Rising Tide Society and Tuesdays Together, which they have a really, really big presence in the wedding space. So especially the wedding videographers, if you come from that background, you probably heard of them. And I'm actually the co-leader of our Tuesdays Together group here in San Diego. So that's kind of how I got into the space. And now I've started to branch out kind of outside the wedding industry and into more creative fields.
I love it. What about, like, what has been one of the most significant, or, like, just the moments in this work where you realize, like, this is, like, I am doing the kind of work that I'm supposed to be doing right now?
Well, a lot of it is when I talk to people and I see them have all these, like, light bulb moments of, like, oh, no one's ever explained it that way, or I've never really heard of this before. And that's how I know that I'm in the right niche. There are a lot of other kind of industries where those industries get a lot of this type of education. Creatives are not like that. Also, one of the tips I give people all the time is I think a lot of us focus too much on what we want to do, not who we want to work with. So, like, I'm not a videographer. I don't know how to work a fancy camera, but I don't need to in order to serve this niche. What was more important to me was, to be honest, again, like, I didn't want to work in a big high rise in a stuffy legal office. I wanted to serve in an industry where I could show up in a black t-shirt every day and work with an audience who was still going to respect me for my expertise and knowledge. And I really found that in this space. So it's mutually beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, I love that. I love that the who more important than the what. Although I think I did see on social, you were trying on, like, some gray t-shirts or something, like kind of stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, so it was it's kind of a running. Yeah, it's kind of a running joke. So all my friends tease me because I'm, like, hyper on brand. If you can tell, like, the walls behind me in my video, one of them's navy, one of them's dark gray. But I only, like, own black, gray, and navy clothing. I also, like, got a little bit too into the minimalism journey a little while ago. But yeah, I went and I bought, like, a white shirt and joked about how I was, like, we're really branching out. I'm doing a brand shoot in, like, a couple weeks, so I've been doing some shopping.
Oh man, that's awesome.
But hey, that makes me. I mean, honestly,
what would you say?
I was like, this is why I work really well with graphic designers and videographers and photographers, because they're like, you already have all the aesthetics together. It's great.
Where do you say, or where do you think creative business owners tend to get it wrong in the as you start working with them and unpacking, where they're stuck? What do you most commonly see?
Well, a big issue is really just not implementing all of the things that people need to be implementing in their business, which really just comes down to simple tracking systems for income and expenses, right? So we have to track our income and expenses. And then from the legal side, I talk about this concept a lot that I call the legal layers of protection, which really just means that you have contracts, you have insurance, and you also look into having proper business entity structure, which for most people is an LLC. So those are what I call the essentials for all business owners. You got to track your income. You need to have those layers. So really missing any of those elements is where people misstep in the beginning. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have people who try to overcomplicate things a little earlier than they should, and then they get themselves into trouble that way.
Yeah, that's a good one. I remember, I think before I started my business, I had just heard whispers of oh, well, you need to have a business plan and you need to have all. And I don't know how I started trying to write a business plan, but that was super frustrating and annoying, and I never actually finished it. But I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe how many people probably get stuck trying to do all of the things before they actually start doing the thing. So I think that even that's a good point of wow, you're trying to do way too many things.
Yeah, it's a good example. A business plan is this anomaly, but all of us think that we need, but we don't actually need. If you want to go get bank financing, you need a business plan, right? But one thing I think that's interesting about this, Ryan, is that if either you or I wanted to go start a new business, let's say I wanted to start a food truck or wanted to start a service-based business, I now, as a business owner, would have the knowledge I would need to start creating a business plan, because I would be like, all right, well, who am I serving? What's the market? What's my price point going to be? But if you've never started a business, right, it's kind of like that chicken and an egg thing. You're not going to know what to put in a business plan, and you're really just playing pretend anyway. So you ultimately just have to start and figure it out as you go, my opinion.
Totally. Yep. That's the best. The best business plan is one that's you're working on it, right? It should never be completed. And if it ever is done, next week or next month, it's going to look a little bit different because, businesses are, at least creative businesses tend to be a little bit more wiggly.
Right. Ever evolving. For most new business owners, their business plan is well, I'm going to get a business card and make a website and join a BNI group. And that's all I got right now.
And sometimes that's all you need, I love, I don't think we've ever really talked about insurance. So as you kind of talk through these legal layers of protection, I would love to just kind of pick your brain a little bit. What kind of insurance should people be thinking about? And keep in mind, videographers, studios, really expensive cameras, really expensive lenses. Sometimes they have a studio where they've got lights and, all of the things, and they have people come to them. Where should people start thinking about?
Yeah, so they're going to want some property insurance for sure to protect all that nice equipment, right? But when we boil it down, and caveat, I'm not an insurance agent, but attorneys often work closely with insurance professionals because it's one of those layers of protection, like I mentioned. But generally, we have two types of insurance that we need to look into. There's general liability insurance, which is what you need to protect someone from injury. So if you're ever working in person with someone, you're doing a shoot, someone gets injured. I don't know, maybe you're you ask them to juggle some things that are on fire or something. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. But they burn themselves, they get injured. There's liability there, right? We need general liability insurance. The other kind of insurance is professional liability or errors and omissions insurance. And that would cover you for any kind of mistake that you make in your business. And there's, we could talk about breach of contracts, all different sorts of torts. We could get into what a tort is if you wanted to. But there's all these different legal claims. And ultimately, there's a few different types of insurance you want to layer on. I know, right? I'm almost falling asleep talking about it myself. But The best advice I give to people, the best advice I can usually give to people is you want to find an insurance agent who understands your industry, and you want to say like, this is what I do, this is who I serve, this is how much my contracts typically are, and they should be able to give you the coverage that you need. But keep in mind they are salespeople, so they're gonna probably try to oversell you a little bit. But if you want to be conservative, buy it all. If you don't, use your discretion.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like we should talk offline and find out, are there insurance people that I should probably have somebody on the show to talk about some of this stuff. I will say that errors and omissions, like whatever insurance, we had that when it wasn't even that long ago. I still have a little PTSD, but we have... we shoot footage on SD cards, then we transfer it over onto our RAID storage, and then we've got a backup, and then I think we even have a backup of a backup. So there's 12 different places. This crazy instance happened where I think the footage on the SD cards was deleted. Not a big deal because we've got it on the hard drive. Then our main RAID system failed. We're like, what the heck? Well, at least we've got the backup system. And we go to check the backup system, and for whatever reason, it failed too. And it wasn't like a power thing. It was like very, like everything was like its own segmented like little thing. We keep footage off site, and everywhere we looked, it just didn't exist anymore. And so it ended up costing us thousands of dollars to recover the footage. I think it was like $4,000 or $6,000. And then our RAID system was broken, which was like, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000, maybe more. Anyway, the fact that we had that errors and omissions insurance coverage, it paid for all of those things. We were able to get a new RAID. We were able to we didn't even have to pay our own money for the service to pull the data back off of the drives. It was like, almost a $10,000 fiasco that everything was covered, and we were sweating bullets, but holy cow. That could have been
and that was probably,
really
that's probably like years and years worth of premiums right there. The like more than paid for itself. That's the idea of insurance is that we hope that we never need it, right? So a lot of people say, I don't want to pay for it. I'm probably never going to use it. Well, we hope that we don't have to. But if you do, it's going to, you're going to be really, really happy that you had it.
What about contracts? How many people do you talk with that they start a new project with somebody and they do it just on a handshake? Are there still those people out there?
Yeah, there are, and I find it differs a lot by industry as well. Like I work with a lot of wedding planners, as you can imagine. They tend to be very type A. They're a lot more buttoned up from the beginning. They're being hired for how detail oriented they are. Photographers and videographers, I find to be like a little bit like less together from the beginning. If I really want to throw a whole industry under the bus, I'll be honest and tell you. I did a speaking engagement recently for a very large group of DJs, and I was like, these people need some help. But a lot of them start out, they're just kind of like doing it for fun, and then they get their first like paid gig cash. Yep. And for them, it's I feel like it's a much slower evolution into like, I have a business. So when it comes to contracts, I think that's a really big determining factor is like how long it takes people to determine that like they quote unquote have a business that want to get serious.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like, and that's, it's the same thing with video. It's like somebody's like, oh, you have a DSLR camera. Can you shoot my wedding? It's like, I guess I can, sure. And you do it I'll do it for $100. And then somebody in the bridal party is like, hey, my wedding's next week. Like, can you do it? It's like, okay. And $200. Okay. And it's just on a handshake. I've worked with, one of my coaching students, this guy is making, well over six figures. And at one point, he like brings up, he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about like, maybe I should get a contract,
oh my God.
Signed with them. I'm like, what? You don't have a contract, and you're like, he has a legit business. He's got a wife and a kid, and like, I'm like, oh, so many things can go wrong, and this can be so bad. I was super thankful that he has a good relationship with this agency that he's working with. But I'm like, dude, you need a basic a contract or something.
Yeah.
What I'm assuming you have like maybe some contracts or something like that, but like what are some of the main things that people need to be like writing down and like, signing off on?
Yeah, when it comes to your contract, the main elements are what service are you providing and how are they paying you, right? So that's the quid pro quo of the deal. Like, what am I providing to you? Video, okay, great, but are you promising them like a numbers of hours of coverage or like an end result kind of like cut or product that's X number of minutes or X number of hours? Like, what's the purpose of the deal, right? What are you providing to them? And then what are they paying you? Do you require a retainer or a deposit? Are there payment installments? What happens if they cancel? What happens if they cancel after they've made one payment or 5 payments or after they've made all the payments? These are a lot of the things that kind of slip through the cracks. And then, of course, with COVID, we've had a whole bunch of COVID-related cancellations, and that's added a whole slew of provisions that we need to think of on top of everything else.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're talking about this because I know one of the biggest frustrations with video people is they're annoyed at the clients that give them endless amounts of revisions. Like, can we do another quick edit? And here's the thing. You're listening to the show. It's your fault. It's your fault for not setting a clear expectation on, hey, you're going to get 2 rounds of revisions or, X amount of hours of editing or anything like that. Like, it really comes down to, like, you setting a clear expectation. If you don't, and the client's like, hey, he keeps editing, so, like, let's have him do another take and see if we like that one better. You know what? Go back to that first take. I know that we're on our 5th take right now, but we like the first one better. We've all been in that spot before, and it's super frustrating. But having a contract that says, how many revisions in our contract, we write, we say instead of 2 revisions, we say up to 2 revisions, so that we're not even guaranteeing that they have to get 2 revisions, but we're saying like, hey, you can have 1 revision and we can be done, or if you want a second revision, because we had somebody that did 1 round of revisions and they're like, okay, this is great. So how much money do we get back since we didn't do a second round of revisions? Because you said that we get 2 rounds of revisions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. So just those little things like that, over the last 17 years, we've been able to tweak different parts of our contract to address those little things that people bring up that you'd be like, why does your contract say that? It's like, because we had somebody that like tried to get us and we're not getting got no more.
Yeah, and for that, I would even have something that says like when the service is over. So we do our first round of revisions. If we don't get a request for a second round within X number of days, then the project will be deemed accepted and you will have like waived your second round or something. So always good to add in more detail, right? The other thing that you can do is, of course, specifying the revisions that you're going to do, but then also for every client, I recommend an additional services paragraph where you're basically saying, how does it work if you request services that are outside of our original scope? This is, this happens with everyone, but especially if you have like package A, B, and C or gold, silver, and bronze, and inevitably people are like, I don't want to pay you all the money for the big one, but then of course, like they want to add on all the things. So for additional services, you can say, we'll quote you hourly. You can also have like a price list. So like, here's what this costs if you request it after the fact. Lots of ways that you can handle that. But a practical tip I give a lot of my students is, because this is what I tell my clients actually when I draft contracts. I only do 1 round of revisions on a contract. So I tell people after I send you the contract, I want you to read it. And I want you to note down any questions or alterations you have. But then I want you to sit on it for at least 2 or 3 days. And every time something pops in your mind, add it to your list. And once you think your list is complete, then send it to me. Because after you've sent that 1 email, I'm doing the edits and that's your round.
Yep, I love that. That's really good. That's what we do the same thing. And a lot of times the people that we're doing videos for, they have a team. Right, so it's not even just them that's like thinking through. I want these things changed. We've run into things where we give it to the person we've been in contact the whole time. They give us a bunch of changes, and then we start making them. and at the same time, they've sent it off to 4 other people on their team, and those people are coming up with changes and we don't even know this. And then we get bombarded with all these other changes. And then sometimes some of those changes that they're suggesting conflict with each other. So like the initial person's like, oh, I love the title. Person number 2 is like, oh, I hate the title. And then person number 3 is like, can we change the size of the title or the font? And we're like, oh, shoot. So we've gotten caught up with like, I guess we'll just go with the first person. So another part of this whole process is like really dialing in who is the project manager, who owns the project, and then even setting the expectation on a kickoff call at the beginning of a project to say, hey, when it comes to time to start doing revisions and stuff, gather up all your team's feedback and give us one voice of feedback versus, you be the one that weeds through what gets decided here versus, us having 3 different opinions and us having to decide unless you actually want us to decide, be very clear on how you're setting that up. Otherwise, it's just endless amounts of revisions, and that's where you'll do more revisions even than your contract says because you kind of messed up by starting on the revision from the one person without waiting for everybody to give you feedback. We go as far as to just email that initial round of that initial list of edits. We'll respond to the client, say like, is this your final list for version 1? Because once you say this is your final list of changes or whatever, then we're going to start working on version 1. And then if you're only getting 2 rounds of revisions, then you're only going to be able to give us that next round, the next time. So not this time. So get them all in this time. Very similar to what you're saying. Like you tell them, wait 2 or 3 days. And then if there's anything else, then send it all then. I love that. That's great.
Yeah, I can only imagine when you get like conflicting feedback from 4 different people from one company, like they're all arguing over the font type or something. I would tell them like, have a team meeting, decide what you all agree on, send that to us. But then I would also probably tell them, you know what, if everyone in your company disagrees on an element of the video, why don't you just say, hey, Ryan, use your independent judgment because you're the expert. You'll be the tiebreaker. Like, that's what I would tell people, right? Like, if everyone has strong feelings in opposing directions, like, just let us make the last call. Like, trust our creative judgment.
Yep. I love that. I think one of the big fears that people have with contracts, I felt like this when I first started my business, and I know I've heard other people say stuff like this, where if you're at the beginning of this, starting this business, it just feels weird, right? It's like this formality where you've kind of been doing favors for friends and they're giving you some money. But the problem or the challenge is if somebody does hire you to do their wedding and it's just on a handshake and you screw everything up, like you should feel terrible. They're going to be very mad. But if you're actually going to do that, you need to take it seriously. And part of that, if your goal at some point is to turn this into some kind of a legitimate thing, is to have a contract, because it just makes it more professional. It makes your client, whether it's a friend or not, feel like, oh, okay, so this isn't just a handshake. There's actually some stuff here. So it brings a whole more level of seriousness. And when you're filming somebody's event, whether it's a wedding or their business meeting or whatever, like that if they're going to pay money for it, it's serious enough that they're saying like, hey, we want somebody to do this. So having a contract is like, it's a no-brainer. And if nothing else, it just makes you seem more like a pro instead of a bro. I find it. But my last thought on here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I find newer business owners in particular, they're like hesitant to send the contract. And what I always tell people, like what I always tell those people, is if I, as a client, am hiring you and I'm ready to pay you money, and you don't send me a contract, I'm honestly going to be questioning your professionalism, because there are things in that contract that are also there to protect me. So it's a mutually beneficial document for everyone. It's not just there to cover your ass. Like, you shouldn't be concerned to like send that to your client.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. My last thought here, and it's sort of, it relates to contracts, but it's more kind of like setting clear expectations. We've done pro bono, we've done pro bono stuff for clients, nonprofit clients, and just other people over the last bunch of years. And what I found is that in some of those like gifts where we decide, hey, we want to gift you a video, and it's, normally we would charge thousands of dollars to do this video, and we get into the editing process, and then all of a sudden, like, they're giving us feedback, and it's like, wow, like the scope of this project's really growing, and they do want like all this, it seems like endless revisions, and they're not even paying for it, or they're paying like a hugely reduced price for it, and then like bitterment, resentment, bitterment. That's my new word. Starts growing, and you get frustrated, and you had like this like heart of gold in that you wanted to do something nice, and now here you are, a month or two later, where you're just like, you want to ring this client, and they're not even really a client because you're doing it for free or whatever, but you didn't set clear expectations. And having contract, even for a free project, a pro bono project, to set those expectations, to say, here's exactly what you're going to get. We're going to do a free video for you, or deeply discounted, and here's what we're including, and here's what we're not including. So it's going to be 4 hours of coverage, and we're going to give you 2 rounds of edits, or only 1 round, or no rounds of edits. We're going to do this video. We're going to do it exactly how we want to do it. We hope that it's in line with you and your brand. You could even have a meeting with them before, just to make sure that your vision kind of meets their brand stuff, so you're not screwing it up, on set while filming, but you're really kind of, you're just telling them exactly what you want to do. And then there's not this weirdness where we've done it in the past by even giving the client, like, hey, if you want additional revisions, we're going to gift you this video, but if you want revisions beyond this, we're so happy to do that for you. And the pricing for, customizing this free project is this much per hour, or, this much per revision, or something like that, so that they can feel like some ownership, and they can feel like they can direct some of that project, and you're not feeling like, what the heck, like, I'm trying to give this away, and here I am working way more on this than I had expected. So there's just a little free piece of advice for you if you want to do some free projects.
Yeah, I especially like the 0 rounds of revisions. I would say, especially if you're doing this, like, yes, to like be nice and build some goodwill, but also because like you need to build your portfolio, then I think the zero round of revisions is really good. Like, we're going to make it for you the way that we think it should be. If you want to pay us to edit it later, then, great. Mm-hmm. Here's our hourly rate or whatever.
Yeah, that's good. Well, Braden, our time's nearing to an end here, but I just want you to envision, close your eyes with me.
Okay.
You don't have to close your eyes. Think of this videographer who's really wanting to grow their business. And, there's obviously, I have this show because over the last 17 years of running a business, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done plenty of things the right way, and I've learned from doing stuff the right way and the wrong way. If you can, kind of give a piece of advice to someone that's really wanting to grow, that might feel stuck or frustrated, in knowing that there are a lot of different areas that they could be stuck or frustrated in, what would be your encouragement or even a challenge for them in this state that they're in?
Well, I would say if you are feeling stuck and challenged, first of all, you got to like strip it back and ask yourself, why am I feeling stuck? What's challenging me? I'm a real big believer in like the one thing. So simplicity, don't overcomplicate things. Mm-hmm. Like, don't try to implement 50 different marketing tactics all at once. Like, pick one, figure it out, take the next step forward.
That's good.
When it comes to what it is that I teach, so the law and tax side of things, it's the same thing, right? So I still probably do tend to overwhelm people with all of the things that they need to do. Like, you got to have all these layers. We have to do all of this, right? But if you come into my universe and you learn from me, everything's going to be it's all a very step-by-step process. So this is step number 1. This is step number 2. Like, we're not talking about step number 2 until you finish step number 1. So it's figuring out what's my first step forward, getting it done, and not, trying to learn about, this entire framework, this entire process, this entire business plan, how to grow a successful business. We just, start with the first step. So that would be, probably the best advice I could give.
I love that. That's really good. We also, before the show started, we almost got in an arm wrestling match. Just kidding. But one of the things that I always encourage somebody that wants this to be a legit business and wants to grow and all that stuff is to get help with the finances stuff, to get help with taxes. And our amazing sponsor, Core Group, has been so great for my business, actually both of my businesses and our personal stuff. And I love being able to point people to them to help with all that stuff. But I know you have an opinion here, and obviously, there are things that people can DIY. There are plenty of things that people can do on their own before they hire somebody. What would you, in your opinion or suggestion, like what are some of those things that where people could start with the way inside of your universe? How can people get started on working some of this stuff that needs attention?
Yeah. So first of all, for a bit of context, I know a lot of people, when they start hearing from me, they're confused because I jump between like tax and legal topics. So to let everyone know my background, I am a licensed attorney. I also have a master's degree in tax law. So technically that makes me a tax attorney. So that's why we kind of cover both of these topics. When it comes to DIYing aspects in your business, here's the thing. Business entities, not that difficult to form. I don't recommend LegalZoom. Not a fan. They've done a lot of, I've seen a lot of people mess up their businesses. So with some good education, forming an LLC is not all that difficult. Same thing with bookkeeping. Like, I'm actually a firm believer that most people should learn how to do their own bookkeeping before they outsource it. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You can start with a spreadsheet if you want. That's what a lot of my students do. Contracts. You're not going to learn how to write a contract. Don't recommend it. Not worth your time. Just get a really good template or hire a local attorney to do that. Tax returns. This is where I probably differ from a lot of tax professionals. I tell people, if all you have is a Schedule C and you don't have a lot of other complex things happening, like, you're probably not going to mess it up too bad if you just file on TurboTax. But if that stresses you out, go ahead and hire someone early. However, if you do have if you have investments, if you have different things happening, then you will want to hire that out. So these are just kind of some highlights of where I direct people as far as what they should do and what they shouldn't do on their own.
That's good. My story is that I had a tax bill of, I don't remember, like $10, $12, $14,000. It was like so much. And this was like really early on in my business. So I did not have any savings. I was investing it all in the business. And I had a friend who was like, hey, you should meet this, tax person that we're using. And this woman, Maria, was like, she's like, hey, you should really become an S corp, like, or not become an S corp, but be taxable. I don't know, how do you say that?
S corp tax status.
Do your taxes as an S corp. However you say that. Thank you. Yes, that thing, please. She's like, if you do that, and anyway, long story short, or long story longer, we started doing our taxes as an S corp, and I think we whittled that like $14,000 down to $2,000, or I got money back. I don't remember, but it was a massive relief. So definitely not something that I would have thought about. So having that strategy element, having, at least for me, having Core Group be very strategic in, like, Ryan, what's your overall plan? Like, where are you heading? Where are you taking this business? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be personally? To be able to have that, like, one-on-one conversation versus like, the DIY stuff I think is super good. And when you're starting, you're DIYing everything. You're building your website, you're making your demo reel, you're figuring out how to budget, like all of that stuff. But then at some point, when you are ready, hiring consultants and experts in those fields, in each of those fields, is like some of the best money that you're going to see a return on. And in my case, it was like, wow, we just got thousands of dollars back that I was going to have to pay that I didn't have.
Yeah, for a lot of people, so the back tax thing, I have a name for this. I call it the oh shit cycle. And what that is when people don't pay their quarterly taxes early in their business, and then they have to get on an installment agreement to pay their back taxes. And now we're paying back taxes and we don't have enough money left over to pay current taxes. So you're always in a cycle of paying these back taxes, right? So we solve that by paying quarterly taxes from the beginning of our business. When it comes to the S corp, S corps are great, but you have to be profiting enough in your business to benefit from an S corp, and that threshold for a lot of people is going to be $80,000 to $100,000 in profit. So for a lot of people, it takes a few years to get there, right? And you have to plan and prepare for it. So once you have an S corp, you have to get on payroll. Payroll requires good cash flow. So a lot of what I teach is kind of the business and tax fundamentals so that we can build good systems. Once you're ready to form an S corp and you go talk to someone like Core Group, they're going to be, you know what, you're a dream client. You're already paying yourself regularly. Salary is going to be a breeze. You're doing your bookkeeping, so we know that you're profitable and you're ready. A lot of that stuff's going to be done, and it's kind of a very smooth transition into the multi six figures in your business. So that's where I try to help people get to that point so that they can really escalate the wealth building from there.
I love that. Super, super important. Man, the work that you're doing is really good. It's kind of like that. You're in between, like a TurboTax, a Core Group, to say like, hey, these are things that you should kind of know. And once you do, when you do grow enough, it makes sense to do this. But we should all kind of have some kind of a handle on our finances, and handing that stuff off at the very beginning and not really knowing like what's going on is probably not the smartest. So the fact that you're educating people and really helping them understand some of those important foundational things, I'd say like your job, what you're doing, is one of the most important, because you're helping businesses like ours be able to do this business a lot longer, right?
Yeah,
so
there's
kudos to you. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a really big gap in the market between like totally DIY services and then like hiring everything out, and filling that gap is what I'm trying to do over in my business. So hopefully it's working. We're working on it for sure.
I love it. Well, Braden, where can people follow you and find out what kind of stuff that you offer online?
Yeah, so since people are already listening, I'm assuming they're a big fan of podcasts, in which case they can hop on over to the swear warning, Unfuck Your Biz with Braden. That's the name of my podcast. Asterisk for the U. I have a book by the same title, unfuckyourbizbook.com. And then I also, if you are on Facebook, I do have a Facebook group. I have a lot of free downloads on my website. Lots of good content over there.
I love it. Cool, man. Thank you so much for your time today, Braden. Any last thoughts on how you want to leave us today?
I would say if you've been avoiding anything in your business, particularly when it comes to the law and tax topics, let's kind of rip that Band-Aid today. Hop on over to my resources, figure out what your starting point is, and dive in. Let's start saving some taxes. Get yourself paid, all that good stuff.
I love it. Awesome, Braden. Thank you again, man. I really, really appreciate your time today. This is really, really good stuff.
Thanks for having me.
My friend, thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're not a part of the Grow Your Video Business Facebook group, get over there. Just go to Facebook and search Grow Your Video Business, and you'll find us there. If you need a sample contract, kind of what Braden and I were talking about, but if you need one specifically for video production, head over to the store where you can get a sample sample copy of the contract that we use. You can find it there in the store at studiosherpas.com/store. Shoot me a message if you need anything else, or if you have topics or guests in mind that you would like to see on the show for future episodes. Hit me up, DM me, email me, Ryan at Studio Sherpas. I want this show to be something that is helpful for you, that is relevant for you. So just let me know what would be most helpful for you. That's it. I am with you. I am for you. Keep being great, and we'll talk real soon. Till next time, adios.